Live.
88.3 WSBU The Buzz, live from St. Bonaventure University. This is the Director's Cut, Tyler Smith, with my co-director, Nic Rohloff, here, back on live stream, WSBU, back on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube Live, as well as online player on WSBUFM.com and 88.3 FM here in the Olean, Allegheny, St. Bonaventure area. Nick, we usually open up the show with Sunday Night Football recap. Obviously, Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys defeating the Minnesota Vikings, but much bigger news came out in the NFL this morning, and it's a doozy. Derrick Henry, foot injury, broken bone in his foot, out for 6 to 10 weeks, and it's looking like it's going to be on the longer side of that. Could be a season-ending injury for Derrick Henry, and Tennessee is not looking great right now, despite being 6-2. How'd you react to this?
My initial reaction was, wow, you never like to see one of the star players in any league get injured, and it's tough to see the best running back in football, the most dominant running back we've seen since probably prime Adrian Peterson, get injured. And so it's funny that I said prime Adrian Peterson was the last dominant running back like Derrick Henry, because he was actually signed by the Titans to be in that new probably committee back between Jeremy McNichols and Darrington Evans. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Titans go from here. But 6 to 10 weeks, as you said, it's going to most likely be on the longer side of that, which means there's about 10 games left in the regular season, or at least 10 weeks left in the regular season. So if the Titans can remain on this trajectory to make the postseason, Derrick technically could be back if he is able to be on that timeline. So you could see King Henry back for the playoffs, but even sitting at a solid 6-2 record, beating the Colts twice already in this season, and that's their biggest competition for the division. They now have a 3-game lead over them. I think they still get in the playoffs, but it's not going to be easy, and you're going to have Tannehill throw the ball a lot and take you back to the playoffs, basically on his shoulders. So you're going to hopefully get Julio back and have him healthy for the remainder of the year, because it's going to be the A.J. Brown and Julio show for the rest of the year.
It absolutely is. And, as much and as big of an impact as
Henry has in the football field, basically attracts all defensive attention at all times when you're facing Tennessee. Titans are still outscoring opponents by a +2 margin when Derrick Henry is held to under 4 yards a carry. So if the new running back or running back by committee can replicate that, the Titans could be fine. It's in fact the only 2 games that Tennessee lost came when the 2 star wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, had either less than 50 yards receiving each, or the 2 were out, which would be their loss to the Jets. So it seems like the team is more dependent on the 2 receivers being available and getting open down the field if Tennessee wants to come out with a win. But obviously, you can't understate how much Derrick Henry affects his football team. It's going to be a glaring loss. Tennessee is going to have to find new ways to win, new ways to play their entire brand of football, because Derrick Henry took up a large part of the snap count. I mean, guy was getting 28 to 30 carries a week. That's a lot of plays that you're going to have to either be cutting in half to incorporate more passing, or you're going to have to really run down the throats of defenses with Jeremy McNichols and Adrian Peterson now, who was just signed today. So it's going to be an uphill climb for Tennessee, but it's 6-2. It's going to be tough to really miss the playoffs. They probably have to go like 3-6 to finish the season if they really wanted to get sketchy. But if they go 4-5 to end the season, they could do it.
Yeah, and the only thing I'm concerned about on the Titans side of things is that a lot of teams, when you play the Titans, game plan around Derrick Henry. And since he's not going to be there, they're probably going to focus more on the passing game, which is going to put, like I said, more stress on Ryan Tannehill. And it's going to be more difficult to move the ball through the air when teams are playing you as a pass-first team. Only few teams can really just go out there and tell you, yeah, we're going to throw it 75% of the time and still be successful. You look at Buffalo. Typically, the Chiefs are successful in that way. But most of the toughest offenses to defend are the ones who mix it up with running and play action. And that was very successful for the Tennessee Titans, being able to hand it off to Derrick Henry and let him tire that defensive front seven. And then right when they start playing it in and jumping, you play action, deep ball to A.J. Brown. It's just not going to be as easy for them and I'm concerned to see the Titans are going to be one and dones if he's not in the playoffs.
Oh, 100%.
100%. I think they will get there because they still get to play Jacksonville at least once and Houston, I believe, at least once. They might even get to play one of those two.
They play Houston twice.
Then, I mean, there's 3 wins right there without Derrick Henry.
Should be. I mean, they did lose to the Jets when they only had Derrick Henry.
So I'm just going to assume that at worst they win those 3 games and they're going to end the season 9-8, which who knows, that might be good enough to win that division with how – I mean, because think about it. The Colts haven't had their bye yet, I don't think. So the Colts have about 9 games left, and they'd have to basically win. If you think the Titans win 3 more, they'd have to go 6. They'd have to go 7-2 in those last 9 games because that they don't have the tiebreaker over Tennessee. So the only way if the Titans win 3 games, beat the Jaguars once, beat the Colts twice, the only way the Colts can take that division from them is if they go 7-2, which would give them a 10-7 record. Sorry,
probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen. So the Titans, I think, are locked into the playoffs because of how bad that division is, and they already swept Indianapolis. That's why we said last Monday that this was a monster game for both teams, and the Titans were able to come out on top. So
unbelievable what Carson Wentz did in that game, by the way.
That'll be part of my Week 8 takeaway.
For sure. We're going to get to all that and more later. Titans actually have the weakest schedule remaining in the NFL.
Oh, so there you go. The
Number 32. They play their next 2 weeks are pretty rough. I mean, LA, but then you're getting a non-Jameis Winston Saints. What confused me about that was why Taysom Hill didn't play any quarterback last night.
He's been injured.
But hey, Trevor Siemian did a great job for them. They still get LA and then the Saints. Then they go Texans. Then they go Patriots in Foxborough. That's probably a loss. Bye week. Jaguars, Steelers, Niners, Dolphins, Texans. That's the weakest schedule in the league by far. So Tennessee should be a lock for the playoffs once again. But like you said, if they don't have Derrick Henry, it's going to be a one-and-done situation for the Titans.
My question for you, and before we move into the Sunday football game, is this the last time we see a dominant Derrick Henry?
Mm-hmm.
Broken foot's nothing to play with, and we've been marveling at the fact of what Derrick Henry has been accomplishing the past 2 or 3 years, and he's been getting so many carries, like way more carries and way more work and way more touches, which means way more wear and tear than any other running back in the league, and he's getting close to that 30 mark. With a serious injury like this, it's a serious question to ask if we're going to be able to see Derrick Henry in his strongest form anymore for the rest of the time he's in the league.
Yeah, Derrick Henry turns
28 before the regular season ends, January 4th. So he's, like you said, getting to that age 30 range. Luckily, he's only missed 1 game in his career thus far. This is his first major injury. So only time will tell. Statistics so far have pointed out that Derrick Henry has shown no signs of stopping. But, injuries work differently with different people. Derrick Henry's the biggest running back I've probably ever seen. So, that much stress on a little bone in your foot could derail a little bit. I still think that while he might not rush for 2,000 yards and they might not give him 30 carries a game, he'll still be a dominant force in that offense, at least till he's 30.
I can see that happening. And before we get to that Sunday football game, we just kind of mentioned it, but just want to get a quick answer. Can the Colts make comeback in this division with the King Henry gone? I don't think so.
So the Colts do have not the worst schedule in the league coming back. It's a bottom, third schedule remaining. They do have the Jaguars, I believe they have the Jaguars twice, they have the Texans again. But they play they have the Jets this week. Coming off a hot Mike White week. They do have the Jets, Jaguars, and they go to Bills. So there could be some traps. I was actually looking ahead to that Bills game in 3 weeks. I said, hey, maybe that could be a trap for Buffalo at home, maybe dropping one to Indianapolis because Buffalo's schedule isn't too tough either. So, yeah, they have their bye week. Week 14 is pretty late, and then they finish out the season with Patriots, Cardinals, Raiders, and Jaguars again. So the Colts could do it. I could see them only losing to, say, a team like Tampa Bay and one of New England, Arizona, or Buffalo if they turn things around. But if Carson Wentz is still playing as erratically as he does and as we saw yesterday, I don't see a path for the Colts to make the playoffs.
And like we mentioned, it's most likely going to have to come with a 7-2 record in their final 9 games. And I don't care how easy your schedule is. If you're not a dominant team like the Bills, like the Rams, listen, the Rams they play the Titans next week. They're going to be 7-2 or 8-1, and they've been a flat out amazing football team.
Yeah, they make bad teams look bad, and
Right.
they could do that to Tennessee next week.
And the Colts don't necessarily do that to the extent. So 7-2 is a tall task, no matter who's on your schedule in the NFL. So I maybe they can sneak in as a. I'm going to tell you that 7th seed in the AFC.
It's going to be rough. It's
going to be very competitive.
There could be 3 AFC North playoff teams. 2 of them could have double-digit wins.
Like the way, we'll get into a little bit later when we look at our teams, but the way the Patriots had just looked against the Chargers in LA, they looked like a playoff type team. Then you take about the Browns, you take the Colts. The Chiefs aren't even in the playoff picture right now.
Yeah, they could easily jump right back in.
They're going to come back in it. The Steelers are going to be in that position. The Bengals might continue to drop into that position. Who knows?
And what happens if the Raiders finish 9-8?
Exactly. Like 9-8, we thought a couple weeks ago might have been good enough to get that 7th spot. I don't know about that anymore. It's very competitive, where we might see a week 17.
In the AFC, though.
Right. We're going to see a week 17, or excuse me, week 18, game 17.
Yep.
Big situation. You saw Jeff Bisson, if you followed the MLB, know all the possible scenarios about the final 2 wildcard spots in the AL. On the last day of the regular season, you're going to see that from Schefter in the AFC come week 18.
There's going to be a lot. I love when that happens because there's like 8 different possibilities and like 6 different seeding combinations that could go on. So that's going to be a fun time in the NFL. But hey, we are only halfway through the season to this point. So it's going to be we're going to have a lot of fun over these next, 8 or 9 weeks as the NFL season rolls on. So there was football to be played yesterday. Obviously, we can't just harp on an injury and harp on the future. There was a football game last night, Sunday Night Football. Cooper Rush, the big-time Rush, comes into Minnesota and makes Kirk Cousins look like, Kirk Cousins. Primetime Kirk Cousins. Cowboys defeat the Vikings 20-16 on a last-minute touchdown from Cooper Rush to Amari Cooper, which was a disgusting catch, by the way. Back of the end zone, toe tapping. And Kirk Cousins moves to now 8-17 in primetime games. This is rough. I'm not in on Kirk Cousins whatsoever anymore. I think he's the definition of mediocrity. And the Vikings are not going to win anything with him at the helm. He doesn't make anybody better. He doesn't really affect a game. He's really a game manager that gets paid $25 million a year. I'm not in on Kirk Cousins anymore. He can't make the big throw. You saw it last night. He wasn't feeding his wide open receivers. He wasn't making good decisions. However, I will say that there's more than one change of scenery that needs to go down in Minnesota, and that's the head coach spot. Mike Zimmer plays far too conservative. You've seen it for years now. The Vikings just haven't been a big play team. The only time the Vikings have made a big play in the last 5 years was when Case Keenum threw to Stephon Diggs, 2 guys who aren't on your team anymore. Case Keenum throws to Stephon Diggs to win a playoff game, and maybe the Kyle Rudolph catch. That was from Kirk Cousins, but that was 5 yards from the end zone. It wasn't necessarily a big play as far as yards go. The Minnesota Vikings are not in a position to win. I'm out on Kirk Cousins. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, he's starting quarterback in the NFL. Absolutely.
Yes.
There's a line though between a starting quarterback that you feel confident going into a playoff run with,
or a starting quarterback. I mean,
like Teddy Bridgewater's starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the difference. Does your team want to compete for a championship, or does your team want to just win 6 games?
Yes, those are the motions.
The Vikings, their defense is lackluster, and they just got Daniel Hunter injured, and I believe I just saw that he's out for the year about 30 minutes before we came on air.
That's another rough one.
Yeah, but the Vikings have way too talented of an offense to be 3-4 right now. And it's funny that we look at them because I watched this broadcast last night on NBC, and they showed the 6 games they played before last night and another 1-score game here. I think they might be what they definitely are, the only team in the NFL that could be either 0-7 or 7-0. Like, no joke. They have every game they've played has been 1-score game. They missed I think it was like a 27-yard field goal week 2 to beat the Cardinals as regulation expired. So they should have beat the Cardinals week 2 on a 27-yard field goal. Week 1, they went to overtime with the Bengals, and Delvin Cook fumbled in Bengals territory where a field goal would have won the game because it already had 2 possessions. So the game was won if they could just keep on going down the clock. And if you miss a 27-yard field goal, maybe they weren't ready to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, they should have more wins than they do, but then they're sitting here 3-4. You have to wonder, are those close game losses, does it fall back on the coaching, or does it fall back on the quarterback not being able to make plays when it matters? I think it's a combination of both. And
so does Jim Carroll.
Yeah.
Commented, agreeing with, I guess, both of us. You seem like it's that kind of sentiment that Zimmer and Cousins have to go. The Vikings sit at what, 3-4 now, 4-3?
3-4.
3-4. So that's not exactly your best case scenario for the playoffs. I just wasn't impressed. It seemed as though it might fall more on coaching at the end of the day because, come on, Dak Prescott wasn't ruled out until 2 hours before the game. So Cooper Rush didn't even know he was starting that night until kickoff basically, and you let him dice you up like that. It seemed like every Cowboys wide receiver had 3-5 feet of space in between him and the defender last night when they received the ball, and it just looked too easy for Cooper Rush. So I can't blame all of it on Kirk Cousins, although
listen, he can't make a big throw. I'm still not confident that he can lead a team into a playoff run, win games in the playoffs. This is not something that will be in his repertoire. That's the reality of it for half the quarterbacks in this league. So Kirk's not going to be able to do it, but you can't blame that all on him. Obviously, there needs to be a change of scenery if you want to not waste the primes of Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, because you have a bunch of really, really good players. You got Everson Griffin, you got Daniel Hunter. I know he's out for the year, but you got other guys that are coming up. If Adam Thielen's still good, he might be a little old, he's still good. Irv Smith out for the year, so he'll be coming back next year. You want to preserve the primes of these star players, and I don't think including Kirk Cousins and Mike Zimmer in those plans is doing an effective job at that.
Yeah, send Jay Jetta to Cincinnati just for fun.
There you go.
We kind of just reamed and got into the Vikings there a little bit, but I want to know, does this loss or win tell you more about the Cowboys or the Vikings? Because we just ripped the Vikings, but personally, I still think this tells me more about the Cowboys.
Interesting.
Because the Vikings, as much as we just harped on them, they still are a pretty good team, I think, or at least an average team in the NFL. So a top-tier team like the Cowboys winning in a hostile environment with their backup quarterback shows me that their defense is way improved. And if Dak Prescott played in this game, they would probably won by 2-3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was going to say, that'd be a 2-touchdown game.
So this tells me that the Cowboys are for real. I kind of believe they already were. But whenever you could go into Minnesota, which is a very tough place to play, I don't care who's on the field for the Vikings, it's going to be difficult, especially for a backup quarterback that really hasn't played. And this team rallied around them. Defense played outstanding, bottling up Dalvin Cook for the most part. Adam Thielen got loose a little bit, but for the most part, Trayvon Diggs did a good job on Justin Jefferson. So this told me a lot about the defense of Cowboys, and then it just showed me again that when Dak Prescott's healthy, and because they have a top 3 offense, their defense is pretty much looking like it's no joke, top half. This is a top 5 team in football, and no doubt about it, Super Bowl contending. As many Cowboys haters are out there, it's going to be an unfortunate postseason run, I think, for the haters.
Yeah, now while I totally agree with you, I was kind of on this train already. This win didn't tell me so much about the Cowboys. It did, because like you said, Minnesota's a tough, really tough place to play, and going on the road with a backup quarterback in any situation is tough. But if they lost this game, it wasn't going to derail my projections on the Cowboys for the rest of the season. They're right where they're supposed to be right now. They're running a really efficient offense. Kellen Moore, second-year offensive coordinator, he's doing a great job right now, incorporating both the run and the pass. They didn't have a ton of yards on the ground yesterday, but that was just at the hands of Cooper Rush. Like he really took over the game last night, 325 and 2 touchdowns to 1 pick. And the Vikings didn't even do anything with that interception either. So it was a great game all around from the Cowboys. He actually got leveled one time and did fumble once. That wasn't even his fault. He was looking to the left, blindside hit. It happens, especially when you're in a situation like Cooper Rush's. So it told me that the Vikings are not a playoff team at this point. I mean, they could obviously turn things around, but there was one time yesterday when Kirk Cousins took a deep shot, and probably his only deep shot of the game was to Justin Jefferson. I think he had one more to Adam Thielen that he overthrew as well. So typical. But he had one to Justin Jefferson that he basically underthrew, and Justin Jefferson had a little bit of a step on Trayvon Diggs. If he put it in the right spot, that could have been 6, and it could have been a totally different game because that was about in the second quarter. Basically derailed the rest of Jefferson's game. He felt awkwardly and just wasn't as explosive as he was so far this season. And Trayvon Diggs, credit to him, he played probably the best coverage I've seen him play all season, albeit he didn't have an interception like prior weeks. So it just told me a lot about the Vikings, that they're just not, to the caliber of playing a team like Dallas. Dallas has been real. They are for real. And once Dak Prescott comes back, they'll be even more dangerous.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned that Minnesota isn't a playoff team. It's interesting. They're sitting at 3-4, but they're still right in the hunt. You got I guess the Saints have locked themselves in maybe to a playoff spot. I don't know. They're 5-2. I don't know how that even happened, but they're 5-2 after 7 games played.
Blame Gino.
Yeah. So you got the Cowboys, the Packers, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Bucks, and I guess the Saints. But that's also
the Saints feel like they're locked in right now.
It seems that way, and I'm going to have to treat them that way. So if you keep them locked in, that's 6 teams. That's only 1 spot remaining. Is it going to be the Panthers at 4-4? The Vikings are still in it at 3-4. The 49ers 3-4. Definitely not the Falcons or the Eagles at 3-4, 3-5. I don't care. And then your Seahawks at 3-5. Maybe when Russ comes back. But as much as we think the Vikings aren't a playoff team, that 7th spot in the NFC is going to be so weak. This is where it's almost like we should have it be original. Top 2 teams get a bye, and it's a 16 playoffs, because that 7th team is probably going to get demolished against, I'm going to assume, the winner of the NFC West, Packers or Cowboys.
Which is interesting is that the conferences are kind of flip-flopping this year. AFC more the deeper conference this season, than the NFC more that top-heavy group, albeit that top-heavy group in the NFC is pretty big. It's like 4 or 5 teams that are legit Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. So while they are more top-heavy, the 6 and 7 seed in the NFC is just not that great right now. Obviously, you can't see much coming from New Orleans and Trevor Siemian in a playoff game, especially if it's on the road. And then, obviously, you're going to have Minnesota, Seattle, San Francisco are probably the 3 teams that I could see rivaling for that 7 seed. At this point, you don't want me to give the prediction here because I'll just go biased, and the Seahawks had a big win against the Jaguars this week. So obviously I'll be biased and say the Seattle's going to take that spot, especially with Russ coming back after this week's bye. But at this point, I honestly have no prediction. I don't know which of those teams is going to have that last spot because they're all pretty bad right now. So at this point, it's just a toss-up. I can see any 3 of them making it. But for all the points I said earlier, I'm just saying Minnesota is not a team that I'd be successful with going into the playoffs.
Yeah, that 7th seed is going to be rough. We're going to head to break. When we come back, we get into some college football talk, new AP 25, break down some of the big-time action this weekend. And then we also go into the World Series, Game 5, Astros, force Game 6. We'll break down if Atlanta's going to blow another 3-1 lead and another big championship lead. Let's talk about that after break. Listening to the Director's Cut on WSBU 88.3 Buzz with Tyler Smith and Nic Rohloff. Stay tuned.
88.3 live on WSBU, The Buzz, St. Bonaventure University. You're listening to the Director's Cut with Nic Rohloff and Tyler Smith, sports directors here at WSBU. We just wrapped up Sunday Night Football, Cowboys and Cooper Rush defeating the abysmal Minnesota Vikings 20-16. And Derrick Henry out 6 to 10 weeks with a foot injury. Not good for Tennessee. Now we move into college football. A new AP Top 25 is coming out. We recap it every week. New same top four: Georgia, Cincinnati, Alabama,
Oklahoma. Those are likely the teams that you'll see in tomorrow's college football playoff rankings. But new number 5, Michigan State jumping Ohio State after a win over Michigan in East Lansing. Nick, any surprises from the top 25 or anything you dislike?
When I say surprises, I actually am quite surprised with how Michigan State jumped. Obviously undefeated 8-0 and just beat rival in Michigan. Good comeback win. I wouldn't say total comeback, but they were down for most of the game and ended up winning. I'm surprised that the AP poll put them above Ohio State, because Ohio State also had a big game against Penn State, won by 9 points. I know they were favored by 18 or so they didn't cover, and it wasn't even close to covering. But I just think Ohio State's been playing a lot of good ball lately, and I am kind of surprised that they put Michigan State above them, even though Michigan State does have the current Heisman winner, and I don't actually see a pathway that he doesn't win it at this point with how mad the quarterbacks have been. Like Matt Corral didn't have that good of a game this week. I know he got injured and then he came back, but they lost. So an undefeated 8-0, Kenneth Walker, the running back from Michigan State, I think is the clear-cut Heisman winner. And I think you know what? I'll be interested to see what the college football playoff committee does, because the first official rankings comes out tomorrow. I'll be interested to see where they put Cincinnati and Alabama. Does the committee value Michigan State's 8-0 more than Oklahoma's 9-0? Do they value Michigan State's 8-0 better than Cincinnati's 8-0? Where does Alabama, a 7-1 team, go? Where does Ohio State go? Where does Oregon go? Does the committee value the Oregon's matchup head-to-head win against Ohio State more than the AP poll does? It's going to be very interesting to see what that committee releases, and I'm excited to see where their head's at. I've been down on this college football year, but it's going to be interesting to see what the committee does with so much parity. And honestly, throughout Notre Dame, the top 7 teams in the AP poll, obviously Georgia's locked into the top 4. Honestly, I don't know what the other 3 are going to be, though. So it's going to be interesting.
Well,
I assume Cincinnati's going to be in it, but
yeah,
I mean,
could they be 4?
Could they be 4? Maybe, like I said, maybe they value Alabama higher, even though they have 1 loss, or maybe they value the undefeated Oklahoma and Michigan State's their resume a little bit higher than Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati did beat Notre Dame. In Notre Dame, I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what the committee thinks.
If I had to throw out my college football, what I think they'll do is that it'll be Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati, Oklahoma. Could also flip Cincinnati, Oklahoma into the 4th spot. But
as of right now, I think that they realize that Oklahoma still could be fraudulent, and they really might be. But you have to take into account Cincinnati's undefeated record to this point as well, and a win at Notre Dame, which is huge. You mentioned Kenneth Walker before. He's going to be the first running back off the board next year in the NFL. He just seems like a big game rusher to me, and a guy that can really affect the game, like a Saquon Barkley could for Penn State. 197 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns, 3 of them in the second half when Michigan State needed him most. It seemed like it was his game to lose, and Kenneth Walker was the man in the spotlight Saturday afternoon. It seemed like he was just end to end dictating the way that game would be played, and he dictated that Michigan State would come out with a win, their biggest win probably in program history.
Yeah, it's definitely a big win for that program. And like I said, it'd be interesting. The committee goes with them. I don't know. I'm pulling up their schedule right now to see who they're going to have to play for the rest of the year. They do have Ohio State on that schedule, and Purdue's next week in Purdue. That's a trap game. They're home against Maryland. They'll probably get through that. If they lose to Purdue, they'll definitely beat Maryland. If they beat Purdue, I still think they beat Maryland. But they end the season in Ohio State and home against Penn State. So it's very unlikely the team finishes the season undefeated. And then obviously they'd be in the Big Ten championship game if they did finish undefeated. I don't know if the Spartan team, even though they do have the best running back in college football, I don't know if they're a playoff team. But they're definitely going to give Ohio State a run for their money, I think.
Oh yeah.
So
especially if Ohio State's quarterback play isn't to the level that it's been over the past few weeks. If it's back to that early season woes, then Michigan State could come out with a win there.
it's just gonna be interesting to see what the committee does. Like it will be, I think it'll be easier when it comes time to give the top 4 and for the college football playoffs, because a lot of things will work themselves out. But I will be very intrigued to see how they rank it initially tomorrow, because like I said, Michigan State and Ohio State play. If Michigan State beats Ohio State, then Ohio State's done.
Oh yeah, 100%
and
done.
Same thing with Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma, because they've looked so poor at times, they have to win their conference undefeated. If they lose one game, they're out. So it's going to be. But if they go undefeated and win the Big 12, then they'll be in. So, and then obviously Georgia and Alabama will most likely play in the SEC championship game. Will they keep a 2-loss Alabama team if they were to lose that championship game? Probably not. So a lot of things will work themselves out for the committee. But like I said, I am actually very excited to see the initial rankings tomorrow.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, and typically the committee throws out a little bit of a different ranking than the AP Top 25. So that's gonna be interesting to see where they slot everybody. We want to talk about pre-show Ohio State, and we
touched on them a little bit just now, but are they back? Is that early season loss to Oregon? Is that just out the window? Are they back on the path to potentially make the college football playoff?
I believe so. I think because they're playing, especially at home against Michigan State, they'll end up winning it. Their final 4 games before the conference tournament is going to be at Nebraska, which should be an easy win. Home versus Purdue, I think they'll win that. And like I said, they actually end the season back-to-back Michigan State at home, and then in Michigan on Saturday, November 27th as the final regular season game. I think they run the table. C.J. Stroud's looked better.
First in QBR in the country.
Yeah, he's looked a lot better than the first 2 or 3 games. So I think they run the table. I think they win the Big Ten tournament. I think they're in the college football playoffs. But I could be wrong, because obviously the Michigan State-Michigan combo on the year is going to take a toll, especially on the defense, having to try to stop Kenneth Walker in that first game. Like I said, I don't know if I totally buy into Michigan, but what would I have said if Michigan State didn't come back and beat them on Saturday? So I don't know.
Trayvon Henderson, another name for Ohio State, their running back. He's been dominant, 12 touchdowns already this season, averaging basically 8 yards a carry. So
that could bode, not so well for a team like Michigan State when the game gets down and dirty in a Big Ten game late in the season. So I could also very well see Ohio State coming back and running the table. And if they do run the table, they're in. So it's the only time we'll tell. They get a lot of chaos these last few weeks in the Big Ten. It's going to dictate a lot for the college football playoff.
So you kind of mentioned it, but I wanted to get your
official,
because obviously the first college football playoff committee rankings come out tomorrow.
Yep.
Who would be your top 4 right now as the season, or if the season ended?
So my top 4 right now, obviously Georgia. You can't take them away from no one.
A dominant performance in Florida, by the way. The game was on a neutral site in Jacksonville, but still wasn't at Georgia. So you're still technically on the road, and 14-point favorites, on the road is no tall task. So Georgia obviously number 1. Cincinnati, I would drop them. They haven't looked dominant against AAC teams thus far. Tulane on the road, they didn't look dominant. They did win by over 2 scores, but they just didn't seem like they're routing teams. Like that, Cincinnati needs to be a team that's just completely shutting down teams in their conference, like not allowing 2 to 3 touchdowns type deal. Their defense is too good to be doing that at this point, and that's for that reason I'd probably slot Alabama 1 slot ahead at number 2, Cincinnati at 3. And I'd actually put Michigan State in at 4. I think their resume is more impressive than Oklahoma's. They've been more consistent than Oklahoma. And, I just don't like the quarterback situation for the Sooners.
Yeah, I agree with you for obviously the top seed of Georgia. I actually do think they keep Cincinnati too.
I think they would. I personally would. As much as I love Cincinnati, I think I'd slot them at 3 right now. They just haven't looked as dominant as they should for me.
I think I would keep Cincinnati too. I think they will as well. Just because I don't see them putting a 1-loss Alabama ahead of them. I agree with you that Alabama's in, and they're definitely going to be 3. I think, and at least they would be in my rankings. And I hate to agree with you for a 4th time, but I would put Michigan State in for Oklahoma. We're kind of been an anti-Oklahoma show this.
Here we have anti-Oklahoma, anti-Ben Simmons. Used to be anti-Kyle Lowry until somebody came to Miami.
Yeah, well, we did used to be team anti-Kyle Lowry. But maybe I just was a little bit on the side of box score watching.
Yeah,
just
true.
when it came to him.
Hey, it takes a big man to admit that. So
I don't do that for everyone, but maybe it was for Kyle Lowry because unless he just is playing a lot harder in Miami than he did in Toronto, he does impact the game in a lot of different ways than just scoring the basketball. Even though I will admit that he still is offensively challenged. I just because on Miami doesn't mean I won't admit that. I think he was shooting like low 30%, and then he had a decent offensive game on Saturday in Memphis. But either way,
we'll get to the Heat in a little bit. They've looked really good. NBA this week in this league coming up in the second hour of the show. Nick, any last thoughts on college football?
Is there any team that you're looking for that could potentially jump into the college football playoff that we're not talking about right now? I don't think there's much room for error. So it looks like a probably six team race tops right now.
I think you could put
Oregon on 7. Like a lot of things would have to help go
Big Ten's got to eat
their way.
Alive, but the Pac-12 has been the culprits of that as of late.
I think if you're going to want Oregon in the college football playoffs, you're going to have Ohio State beat Michigan State, and then them two. I don't know.
Ohio State lose to Michigan, and then Michigan.
Yeah,
I think has to lose like Penn State or something like that. Like it's going to be.
It's
need,
tough.
4 different scenarios to go the right way for Oregon to get in,
but they're in it. They're in it. I think still. My question to you would be: I know how much we're anti-Oklahoma. Ohio State or Oklahoma, who would be the fifth? Who would be the first team out?
Ohio State or Oklahoma? If you're assuming that Ohio State runs the table.
No, I'm saying like right now in tomorrow's rankings, who do you think the committee has first out between the two? Because if we both think that
if we both think Michigan State's going to get in,
it would be at the 4. Then who's 5th? Oklahoma or Ohio State? I'm genuinely curious.
Oklahoma. They would. I think they value the record, but at the same time, I don't think that that's contingent on if you're a Power 5. In Cincinnati's case, they've not been valuing record over strength of schedule in past years, especially teams like UCF, who they didn't even put in the top 10 a lot of the times. So that could dictate what they do tomorrow night. I'm not sure because AP's been having Cincinnati at number 2 all season. Could see a shakeup of what the college football playoffs does, a little sway from what they've been used to in years past.
I mean, I would put Ohio State at 5, but that's just me. So let's move on.
We're anti-Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is what it is. It is what it is. Let's move on to the MLB World Series. I thought after the first inning of last night's game that we'd be talking about how the Atlanta Braves had this unbelievable playoff run and are 2021 World Series champions, but the 2017 Astros had different plans.
Oh, God, yeah. Everybody was firing on all cylinders last night for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, it was Altuve, Correa, Bregman, Marvin Gonzalez, Yuli Guerrero, all the players from the 2017 championship team really dominated yesterday. I think the Braves had a golden opportunity. It was Sunday, excuse me, but by the way. I thought the Braves had a golden opportunity to put this game away. I mean, they were 4-0 after the first inning.
Yeah.
And I thought it was over. I thought, like, if you're on the brink of elimination and then the team you're playing in the World Series drops a grand salami on you in the first inning, I just assumed the Astros would roll over, but they didn't. And they put up 9 runs in the game. I don't know. They forced Game 6. And you take games one at a time. Both games are going to be in Houston. I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to see another Atlanta sports team blow a big-time lead in a big-time moment, and it's going to continue to be a meme town over there as the Astros. I think they're going to come back and win. I really do.
Yeah. If any team's going to do it, I believe it's the Astros. They have the lineup. They have the strength in batting to do it because – Atlanta's bullpen showed last night that they can let up 3 runs in an inning and just really implode for this Braves team. And, at the end of the day, we got to look at what we saw for 162 games is that the Braves were not like a dominant team. They just snuck in the playoffs. We were having conversations if the Phillies or the Mets could have caught up to them in the last 2 weeks of the season. So nobody was really confident that the Braves had the ability to pull something like this off. Now they're here. They've been doing it. They went up 3-1, still up in the series. So like they only need to win one game to really bring a championship to Atlanta, which they have not seen in a long, long time. Probably since the last time the Braves won it. And it's just looking like you're gonna need something big out of the Atlanta bats next time up, because if this one goes 7, I can't see Atlanta coming out with a win over Houston in Houston Game 7. It's a great baseball crowd out there. They have a great team. Not the best pitching, but you could easily say it's better than Atlanta's. Right now, it looks like the Astros are back in the driver's seat after the Braves kind of took a dive on in Game 3 or Game 5, excuse me.
Game 6 probables for Tuesday night at 8:09 on Fox. Astros are going to send out Luis Garcia. Looks like Braves Max Fried or Fried, however you want to say it. It's the right man for Atlanta.
Oh yeah,
it's their best pitcher after Charlie Morton's out, but he got shelled in Game 2 when the Astros played him. So I don't know. I really do. I
think the best plan of action is to throw him now instead of a clinching Game 7.
I agree. The Nets. Remember what they talked about the Nets and Bucks when KD and Harden were exhausted after a big Game 5 when they're like, you know what? They didn't do it. It was like, oh, why don't you bench Harden, KD, give him a breath, or
take a dive for Game 6?
Yeah, and then just throw him out there fully ready to go for Game 7. I mean, they lost both games and they didn't bench him Game 6 anyway. But just remind me of that. I don't know how the Braves go into Houston and win Game 6. I've been doubting them all postseason. They've lost. They had the lowest win total out of any MLB team in the whole playoffs. So I don't know. But I did see something funny the past, I think, since 2017. No, 2018. The World Series champion has eliminated 2019, sorry. I forgot 2018 was the Red Sox. 2019, 2020, and 21 possibility eliminated the Brewers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So the Braves might continue the trend if they win. Because the Nationals eliminated them in 2019.
That's true.
And the Dodgers eliminated them last year, not yesterday. I'm all over the place.
So, yes, it's basically whoever beats the Brewers comes out with a World Series victory. That's real interesting. Who do you think right now is the odds-on favorite for MVP if each team won? Give a prediction for each team. Obviously, I'm not the best when it comes to insider baseball stats and next gen and all this stuff, so I don't really know everything that goes into affecting the outcome of a game. I see what happens, I react to what happens, and I kind of talk about that. I'm not super involved in the deep dive into baseball's analytics. But Nick, you are definitely more inclined than me in that spot. Who's been affecting the series most thus far, and why?
For the Braves, I think Freddie Freeman was cold, but he's been really picking it up the past couple days or couple games. So if the Braves were to win it, and I assume Freddie Freeman would play a big part in that, I'd think he would. But Jorge Soler has also played really good in the series. Couple homers.
Been playing really good.
Obviously Adam Duvall had the grand slam in Game 5, even though they lost. For the Astros, it's a little bit more complicated.
A lot of guys have been producing.
Exactly. It's kind of tough to put one person onto it. Michael Brantley's been really good. Altuve's been not as good as you would usually see him, but you mentioned Kyle Tucker being really good. Carrera hasn't been bad. Yordan Alvarez has been pretty much their best hitter this postseason.
Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker are probably the two most consistent hitters this postseason.
Yeah, I mean, Yordan's hitting .320 in the playoffs with 9 RBI, a couple homers. Correa's got 9 RBI.
Bregman hasn't looked bad either.
Kyle Tucker has been the probable 4 home runs, 15 RBI, 293 average, 5 stolen bases this postseason. He's been solid. So I really actually think if the Astros were to win the World Series, and so their MVP would be, I think, the best player from Game 6 and Game 7. I don't think a player.
Sorry, I missed it. What'd you say?
I said it would be someone who from Game 6 and Game 7. It'd be hard to put a finger on it right now
because everybody's basically at that same level.
Yeah, and they've only won 2 games, and a balanced offensive explosion. There's been nobody on the Astros that's really stood out to me.
Mhm.
So I think it would be one of the better players from Game 6 and Game 7 for the Astros side of things. So,
Well, odds-on MVPs right now are Jorge Soler and Freddie Freeman. Jorge Soler plus 600, Freddie Freeman is plus 700, and then Adam Duvall and Austin Riley close behind at plus 750. The first Astro appears at plus 900. That'd be Altuve. And then Brantley is at plus 1,100. Kyle Tucker at plus 2,000, and with Carlos Correa as well. So obviously it's going to take a little bit for those Astros guys to get back in the mold of favorites odds-wise because they're down 3-2. But right now it seems that odds makers believe that Altuve, if all stays consistent, would be the Astros pick for MVP.
I agree. We're going to have to break. When we come back, we go to NBA hashtag This Week in This League. We have a lot to get into. We drop, after 2 weeks, our first power rankings in there. We talk about each of our teams, the NBA new officiating rules, which has been in the media for it's been a hot topic the past couple of days. And we talk about some surprises in the NBA for the first 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. You're listening to Director's Cut with Tyler Smith and Nic Rohloff on WSBU 88.3, The Buzz.
For delicious frozen treats at the end of the day,
Look no further than Simply Simple homemade ice cream. Located right next to the Hickey Tavern in Allegheny, Simply Simple offers a variety of uniquely flavored ice cream, milkshakes, and Italian ice. Additionally, seasonal specials, ice cream nachos, and even alcohol-infused ice cream for those over the age of 21 are featured items. Simply Simple is constantly updating their menu with new flavors, including the new fall flavor, caramel candy apple, made with caramel vodka, Fireball whiskey, and apple cider ice cream. Follow and like them on Instagram and Facebook at Simply Simple Homemade Ice Cream to track the latest menu updates. Be sure to stop by 100 West Main Street in Allegheny, Wednesday to Thursday, 5 to 8, and Friday to Saturday, 5 to 9. Also, for 10% off your order, mention you've heard this only on WSBU 88.3 The Buzz. You must be 21 or older to consume alcohol. And that's our new underwriting from Simply Simple Homemade Ice Cream. Guys, it's been awesome to finally get some collaborators here at WSBU as we've moved through the first semester. So it's been awesome to get some guys partnering up with the station. So that's really awesome of Simply Simple, and we hope to get more businesses involved around the Allegheny area. So that's really awesome. We move on to NBA, hashtag This Week in This League, recapping the week of madness that is sports' greatest soap opera, the National Basketball Association. And I'll come out and say it. We're going to get to Knicks Heat in a little bit. They're on fire, no pun intended. The Celtics are at the bottom of the pot of gold, if you want to get punny for Boston there. Celtics sitting at 2-4, another overtime loss last night to the Wizards. Just not exactly what I've hoped for through the first 6 games of the season for my Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown averaging 25 points a game, the highest wing scoring duo in the NBA to start, has not resulted in wins. So obviously, as a Celtics fan, I'm conflicted with what's going on right now. I said Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would be the ones to carry this offense, and they have so far. Just hasn't resulted in win column. Nick, what have you seen from the Celtics so far? And obviously, there's not a lot not to like. But have you seen anything that's encouraged you so far?
Oh, you wanted me to try to be positive?
You might. There really isn't a lot to be positive. So just give me your honest opinion of where the Celtics are at right now.
Sound the alarms. Raise the flags.
Oh boy.
I'm not ready for this.
I'm really concerned.
Oh, good.
A loss in New York in double overtime, first game of the season, not bad. Like the Knicks look decent. Still don't think they'll do anything in the postseason, but they'll be a good regular season team. Then bad loss at home to the Raptors. That was bad.
30 points. Bad.
Then win in Houston. Okay. Win another overtime game against Charlotte in Charlotte. Okay. And then at home Wizards by double digits. Or 9 points, excuse me. And then lose again in Washington. Played them in back-to-back games by 3. I don't think Washington's special. So 2 losses in a row to them. It's concerning. Not to mention the Raptors loss. They play the Bulls tonight. If they lose
to the Bulls tonight,
the Bulls look good, but if they lose again at home, dropping to 2-5 again, and you would expect them to at least have a winning record, playing the Wizards twice and the Raptors once. It's concerning. Dennis Schroeder stinks.
Yeah, not good.
Marcus Smart has looked abysmal, shooting wise.
I'll say Smart has been dealing with an illness for the past week and a half. It's been pretty irregular. It's not something that he's just got a cold and he's playing through it. He's actually pretty sick, so he actually didn't make the trip to Washington this weekend. I'm not sure if he's playing tonight. I haven't gotten that update yet, but he could be. Jaylen Brown also recovering from COVID. He actually said it seems like he's playing 3 games after playing 1, so he's obviously more fatigued than normal. You saw that at the end of the Knicks game in Game 1, and obviously playing more than 1 double overtime game in the first week and a half of the season doesn't bode well for your long-term stamina, especially coming off of COVID-19. So that's something that to monitor thus far. Jaylen Brown's looked really good offensively. You just have to be able to close out games down the stretch, and the Celtics haven't been able to do that so far.
My thing is, I expected the Celtics to be better defensively this season.
I did as well.
And they've averaged, and they've played a lot of overtime games, so this definitely inflates the defensive statistics. But giving up an average of 118 points through the first 6 games, it's not very good. That's actually in the East the worst points per game given up.
Oh, great.
In case you didn't know. And if we flip it to the West, it is, I think, unless I'm missing it, I actually think it is the worst in the NBA.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you that.
A decent margin here, too. I think the next closest is I think the Hornets at 115.
Yes, it's actually the Grizzlies at 117.
117?
So,
I missed them.
Hornets are right above them at 28. So the Celtics are the worst defensive team in the league through 6 games. That's not a good look, especially when you're adding guys like Al Horford back, Robert Williams taking that next leap. He's been really active defensively. You haven't seen enough from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the defensive end so far. Jason Tatum, as much as I love him, as much as I think he could be an MVP candidate one day and a top 5 perennial player in this league, with the new foul rules, we're going to get into that in a couple minutes. With things being a little more rugged this season thus far in the NBA, Jason Tatum hasn't been getting all of the calls necessary for him to be as productive as he was last season from an area like the free throw line. So he has been taking to the basket more, which I fully support. I think he needs to take shots closer to the rim than further, even though he has the ability to shoot very well from long range. He needs to take more shots closer to the rim, and he just hasn't been as active defensively this season so far. So, is it going to come down to playing better? I think that's been a scapegoat answer for a lot of Celtics fans out there, is that they just need to play harder. I think something does have to change in the coaching philosophy. It's Ime Udoka's first year as a head coach. We're going to have to see how that plays out over the first half of the season. I mean, it takes a while to get adjusted to that role. Brad Stevens up in the front office right now. I mean, obviously they need to have some talks about some things at some point for this team to right the ship. But right now I'm not sounding the alarms yet. It's just not a great look to start the season for the Celtics. We'll see how they respond against the Bulls tonight. That's at home. If they get blown out again, we might have a different question come next week.
My concern about Tatum, and I'm sure he'll pick it up, but his efficiency has been not there. He's averaged 25 shot attempts per game, making 10 of them. He's shooting 27% from 3, 47% from 2, but with the 3-point average, it's 40% shooting overall. Yeah, it's not great. And I know you said that him and Jaylen Brown are going to have to carry the offense, and you can tell when 2 players combine for 45 shot attempts, as good as the 2 are, I don't think that's a winning strategy to have 2 players take 45 shots a game combined. They're both shooting the well from the free throw line, and they're both shooting 5 free throws a game and making 4 of them, both in these. Well, Tatum 78%, Jaylen Brown exactly 80%. But either way, they're going to need to be more efficient, especially with a team that's lacking in offensive ability outside of them. It's not going to work if they're not efficient. And that's my main concern. And if they were able to play defense, they would make up for their – I mean, I'm not saying them 2 individually can't play defense. I'm just saying the team as a whole. When your 2 best players take 45 shots a game and aren't efficient with them as a whole, and you don't play good defense as a team, it's not a winning formula.
It used to be such a problem for the Celtics to have a logjam on the wing. They used to have guys like Jay Crowder and all these guys that play basically to the same capability around the wing for the Celtics. There were so many guys you plug in and out, and it never was a consistent enough rotation for the Celtics to be successful in that department. And now you're seeing that it's just Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as your rotating wings right now, and your bench guys like Josh Richardson or Aaron Nesmith, who I believe should be playing more. He has not thus far this season.
Aaron Nesmith or Josh Richardson?
Aaron Nesmith.
Okay, I was going to say, because Josh Richardson
is in the end of lineup, in the end of games lineup, and I'm not really confident in his ability to do that. Aaron Nesmith plays super hard, really scrappy player for a guy who hasn't gotten his shot to fall down as consistently as he'd want to thus far in his career. So he's been really scrappy, really active defensively. So I really liked what I've seen from him thus far, especially what I saw in Summer League as well. But Romeo Langford also there. It's just not a good enough group of guys on the bench to really support Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in a wing-dominated league. Your guard spots, obviously Marcus Smart, he's been shaky thus far. He's had one really solid game.
I believe it was the one against the Hornets. It was a really solid game for him. And then Dennis Schroeder, obviously Peyton Pritchard. And, at this point, there are just too many good guards in the league for these guys to be playing lackluster. They need to step it up a little bit more. And then I'm totally fine with what I've seen from the bigs. Al Horford, Robert Williams, they haven't been getting lost on defense too badly. A lot of the Celtics' woes on defense have been defending jump shots, and teams have been shooting really well against Boston. So we'll see how they respond and we'll see how trends go over the next few weeks. But right now, the Celtics need to defend better, and they need to get better in all areas, really, to right the ship.
Yeah, let's stop harping on the Celtics being super negative, because let's get positive. Let's talk about
somebody else's team.
Miami Heat, 5-1, tied for the best record in the NBA. They're the best defensive team in the league. The Nuggets do hold their opponents to 0.2 points per game less, but every other defensive metric has the Heat at number one team in defensive. The defensive
kind of crazy. A team with Nikola Jokic as a star player has the best defensive rating.
Well, they're struggled offensively a little bit.
Yeah,
because
most of their games have been low scoring.
Yeah, because it's Jokic, Michael Porter Jr.,
who hasn't shot well,
and they really don't have someone who could go get their own basket.
Yeah.
So it's been basically Jokic and MPJ and everyone else, like, please make your shots when you're open.
Free Bones Highland is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Free Bones Highland in the rotation in Denver, you're going to see it on offensive production.
Yeah, either way, going back to the Heat, 5-1, won 4 in a row. Their only loss was in Indiana in overtime.
Indiana's only win.
Yeah, which is very strange that they're this bad this early. That's one of my surprises. But either way, that was the one game that Kyle Lowry didn't play. So 5-0 when Kyle Lowry does play. And every single win they've had are by 13 points or more, beating the Nets in Brooklyn by 13 last week, and then beating the Hornets at home by 15 on Friday, and then on a back-to-back after having to fly to Memphis with no Bam Adebayo, beating the Grizzlies by 26 really caught me by surprise. But when Jimmy Butler is playing the way he is, when Kyle Lowry is setting the team up the way he is, and then Tyler Hero, my sixth man of the year pick, which looked a little biased at the time, but the beat reporters in Miami did me justice. They might have been wrong about him leading the team in scoring, because I didn't expect Jimmy Butler to come out with this type of efficiency and drive to the basket and scoring ability, averaging 25 points per game for the first 6 games. But if it wasn't for him, he would be leading Tyler Hero, leading the team in scoring with 22 points, alongside 6.7 rebounds and 4.5 assists, while being pretty efficient, shooting 46% from the field and 39.5% from three. Hero's been outstanding off the bench. Jimmy Butler has been outstanding, shooting 53% from the field. Even he's shot 1.3 threes a game and shooting 38%. Probably made like 4 total on the year. But I'll take any 3 Jimmy Butler shoots. But here's the thing. We talked about officiating and some of the stars' lack of ability to get to the line because they were either forcing the contact or making a non-basketball play to get the contact. Jimmy Butler is averaging 7.7 free throw attempts a game, and he's made 6.8 of them at an 89.1% clip. That's at the top of the league through the first 6 weeks or 6 games when it comes to free throw attempts. And if you're what the stars who haven't been getting the calls are, if you just go to the basket and go up strong, you're more likely to get fouled. So you'll go to the line. Stop the little ticky-tack, try to draw the fouls, and just try to actually score and draw contact that way, rather than just throw your body and throw your arms and be all fake about it. It's really effective. The whole Heat team as a whole has shot really well from the free throw line, and that's been a big part of their success on offense. Like I said, they're giving up 97 points per game on average, and they're scoring 114 on average, which is 17-point differential, which leads the league. Yeah, which leads the league.
Obviously.
Yeah, 17. I mean, it does help when the first game you play on the year, you beat the Milwaukee Bucks by 40.
It's also true.
But either way, like I said, every win they've had has been by 13 points or more. It's fun time in Miami land, and barring any injury, this team will be among the top in the East. And the way I think it's set up, and it's making me nervous because it's another Kyle Lowry-led team, a team that's good defensively and tries hard in the regular season. It's only been 6 games, but for some reason, I'm getting Toronto Raptors vibes from the Miami Heat. When I mean Toronto Raptor vibes, I mean be number 1 in the East, lose to the best player in the East, which would, I mean, you could say it's either KD or Giannis. But I'm nervous about that part of it. But the addition of PJ Tucker, if he's healthy, Markieff Morris, even off the bench, has been good defensively. People forget Victor Oladipo is coming back in mid-December, maybe early January. If he even comes back to 75% of himself, that's another player off the bench that is a former All-Star, can create his own shot and defend. Team's scary. That's all I'm going to say. Scary.
If they can sustain what they've been doing offensively for an entire season, yeah, they're the best team in the East. I'll come out and say that.
It's actually, they've had the second most point. Never mind. I was going to throw a stat out there, but I don't even want to say who's first in the league in scoring.
Oh.
In the East, at least.
Okay. So.
Actually is the league. Whoops.
Oh, boy. I can only imagine what team that is.
You know who it is.
I know who it is. We won't mention it out of
Actually lied. Third. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So they're not first. Yeah, the Heat look good. They look like they look like they were advertised. As a really, really staunch defensive team, and right now they're firing all cylinders offensively. You mentioned before the season, Tyler Hero would be a big part of their offense, and he's averaging 20 points per game. We said that was plausible for him to do this season, and that, like you said, could result in a 6 Man of the Year consideration for him.
I think he would be leading. It would be him and Carmelo.
Yeah.
That's the two leaders right now.
Yeah, but I'm not in a Carmelo sustaining a 6 Man of the Year type year.
Me neither. I'm not. My Bam Adebayo looks a good early. I don't know if he still does because he missed a game, but through the first 5 games of the season, he was actually leading the league in defensive win shares and also holding opponents to 21.6% shooting, one being the primarily defender or defender.
Interesting. Nick, aside from the lack of free throw shooting by most star players this season, what are your surprises that you've seen thus far in the NBA?
Well, I think the surprise is it's hard to not acknowledge the lack of scoring from some of the big-time players, James Harden, Dame Lillard, Devin Booker, but I don't want to go there. We're going to talk about the officiating a little bit as a whole, but when I'm just talking surprises, I kind of mentioned I'm very surprised at the Indiana Pacers struggling the way they are, 1-6, tied for the worst record in the East, and I think the NBA and the NBA. They have Malcolm Brogdon, who's a good player, Domantas Sabonis, who was an All-Star last year, good player.
Really good
Karis LeVert made his NBA or season debut a couple of days ago. Rookie Chris Duarte has averaging 17.7 points. He looks like the front runner for Rookie of the Year already. And not to mention you have Miles Turner and Jeremy Lamb off the bench, Justin Holiday, TJ McConnell. Like, you just go through those names I all mentioned. Outside of Chris Duarte, those are all pretty well-known names that have always contributed to winning teams. And it's just really shocked me to see them struggle like this early. Like I mentioned, their one win was against Miami in overtime at home, but losing to Charlotte, losing to Washington, Milwaukee, Toronto twice, Brooklyn. It's just really been surprising to see what a competitive team 2 years ago was the 4 seed, and last year they were playing in the playoffs, I believe. Is just surprised to see them struggle this early.
Yeah, I haven't seen
much to like about from the Pacers so far this year, and it is interesting because they are missing TJ Warren, I'm pretty sure, right, to start the year.
He didn't play all last year either.
Yeah, so that they were still very competitive all last season. And without Warren, now they add more pieces for especially offensively, and they're just worse. It seems a little weird for that to be the case, but surprising nonetheless. My surprise thus far in the NBA has honestly been Golden State with their production that they're able to been having without Klay Thompson in the lineup. It's been interesting to see the group of guys stepping up for Golden State. Obviously, Damian Lee and Jordan Poole both averaging 14 points a game is something that Warriors fans have been waiting for. Obviously, the young guys that they've been drafting and building up over the past few years, finally making that step to be big parts of the rotation in Golden State. So that's really interesting. And Steph, obviously, still leading the league in scoring. He has not been affected much by the new officiating as well.
Yeah, no. Going for a second surprise for me, I'm looking more towards just personally the negative side of some of the other teams, because it's unbelievable to see the Suns be 2-3 It is unbelievable to see the Clippers be 1-4. It's hard for me to fathom these top tier teams struggling early, and it's kind of was in my mind talking about the Pacers as well. I mean, the Suns, the reigning Western Conference champion in the NBA Finals, they've lost 3 games, got 30 clipped by the Blazers, lost to the Nuggets by 12, lost to the Kings. They have just been really struggling. Their 2 wins against the Lakers, when the Lakers, it was the second game of the year, but the Lakers obviously looked god awful to start the year and really had an identity crisis. They've turned it around just a tad bit. And then and their other one was to the Cavs, which the Cavs 3 wins, but it's really not that impressive of a win. But you look at the Clippers. I projected them to be a top team in the West. Yes, I knew there was no Kawhi Leonard, but Paul George is still a really good player, and I believed Reggie Jackson, will be able to get some wins for this team. They lost to the Warriors in their first game, lost to the Grizzlies in their second game, beat the Blazers very handily, but then lost to the Cavs and lost to the Blazers again. And then they do play the Thunder tonight, which they'll probably get a win to move to 2-4. But it's still very surprising to see these top teams, or what you would think be a top team, not pick up wins early in the season. But then you look on the flip side of that, and you look at the teams that you didn't expect to be that good with top records. I picked the Bulls to be the 4 seed in the East, or 5 seed, 4 or 5 seed in that range. They're 5-1 early. Their only loss, who'd they lose to? Drawn a blank on that, but they just beat the Jazz and handed them their first loss of the season in their final, or their last game. The Bulls' one loss was against the Knicks. It just came to me, who are 5-1 and looking strong. The Wizards 5-1. Montrezl Harrell, KCP, Kuzma, the people the Lakers traded for Russell Westbrook from the Wizards have looked outstanding early on in the year. Their one loss coming against Brooklyn in Brooklyn. But the Wizards have beaten the Raptors, they beat the Pacers, they beat the Celtics twice, and they beat the Hawks. They've looked outstanding. And just to harp on Bradley Beal averaging 24 points a game, but Spencer Dinwiddie, who they signed, he's averaging 20. Montrezl Harrell's averaging 19. Kuzma's averaging 15. KCP's averaging 10 with a roundup. And they also have Davis Bertans, who hasn't been shooting well, and he'll get to that point, I assume, to where he starts shooting well as a well-known three-point shooter. He's been struggling early. They have Corey Kispert as a rookie, Denny Advia, who they drafted in the first round last year. The Wizards have surprised me because I didn't think the hand-me-down Lakers, essentially, added to Bradley Beal, were going to change that team around. And it's very early, and it's hard not to overreact to 6 games because we're at that point in the season where we don't know if they are going to be sustaining this, or are we not taking them serious if we don't really think that it's going to be able to happen. So it's a tough spot for us people judging these teams to realize if they're real or not. But if you just look around the league as well, the 76ers are 4-2, Hornets are 5-2, the Raptors are 4-2, the Bucks are 3-4 with 3 straight losses. This has surprised me. This really has. I can't believe the Bucks are 3-4. They lost to the Timberwolves, Spurs, and Jazz. Those are the last 3 losses, and their 4th was against Miami. But they beat the Spurs, Nets, and Pacers, and they play the Pistons tomorrow to get back on track, hopefully, for the reigning NBA champions. Giannis has played well. Middleton has done well. But Drew Holiday, his health has been not there, which has been key to their struggles. He's only played in 2 games. He sustained a little bit of an injury in game 1 against the Nets, didn't play game 2, played game 3, and hasn't played since. So Drew Holiday's injury has been quite concerning. And that was really the difference maker for the Bucks. And that's why they were able to get over that hump and win a championship last year, is because his added playmaking and his added defensive ability and shot-making ability for the Bucks was so essential in Milwaukee bringing home a championship last season. So, Tyler, welcome back.
Sorry, guys. Quick emergency for co-director Tyler here. It's not something you want to have it go on in the middle of a radio show, but we're back. Nick, I'm sorry. Where were you?
Yeah, I just was talking about how the Wizards surprised me being
100%, yeah.
And the hand-me-down Lakers doing so well, and then you look at Milwaukee struggling. No Drew Holiday, but still lost 3 straight. And I just talked about how the Suns struggling and Clippers struggling. even though they had no Kawhi, I'm still surprised that they're 1-4.
Yeah. No Kawhi, 1-4. Paul George is putting
Him on his back. There hasn't been much offensive production outside of him. What's been a surprise to me is kind of how chaotic the Mavs have been. Not doing so well. I mean, 3-3 isn't the worst start in the world. Obviously, you could beat the Celtics at 2-4, or the Pacers at 1-6. But it just hasn't looked like things have been clicking for the Mavs. I've been watching Kristaps Porzingis pretty closely. I drafted him in one of my fantasy basketball leagues. I don't know why I'm in so many, but he just hasn't looked like he's going to be able to make that jump that Luka needs for a second superstar. He after his injury, obviously, the year in New York before he tears his ACL was magical. He was really, really good for the Knicks. And now after that, he just hasn't looked very agile, especially in the pick and roll. And Luka's been having to settle for more step back threes, which is largely what he did last season. And if the Mavs want to, compete with the West that gets better every year, the NBA that gets better every year, they're going to have more. They're going to need more production out of Kristaps Porzingis and the role players around them, because it can't just be the Luka show. He can't bring you to a top 4 seed and then a deep playoff run by himself. It's just not how the NBA works at this point. It's too much talent.
Yeah. Now that you're back, I want to go more in depth before we go to our first of the season NBA power rankings. I want to look into the officiating and some of the stars that have been lower on the scoring spectrum than usual. A player like Devin Booker, averaging 22.6 points per game, 23rd in the league. Joel Embiid, he's averaging 21, but he does usually get to the line. Maybe some of those fouls he was getting shouldn't have been there. James Harden, 40th in the league in scoring at 18.6 points.
Crazy.
Damian Lillard, 42nd in the league in scoring, 18.3 points per game. It's just unbelievable to see some of these top-notch players like that be this low because of the foul calls. Like Scotty Barnes is basically averaging the same amount of points as Damian Lillard and James Harden. So it would be right now. It's either Chris Duarte or Scotty Barnes for rookie of the year. But either way, it's just so surprising to see those top-notch scorers not average well into the 20s, and it's most likely because of these foul calls. So what do you make of these stars not averaging much more points? Are you happy that the game is actually being officiated the correct way and not bailing out these stars who just flail and fake foul all the time?
It's interesting because a guy like Damian Lillard has not really been I don't know. I don't watch every Portland
They're
game.
on late, and they're not in my region. I'm not watching every Portland Trailblazer game. I wish I could. But a guy like Damian Lillard has not seemed like a guy who just flails his arms all the time. He seems to attack the rim with some force, with some meaning, other than getting a foul. He's looking to be a guy that finishes at the basket. But so far this season, he just hasn't been. I mean, the free throws you talked about, he's only shooting 4 a game. For a guy with that much usage, with that much time with the ball in his hands, should probably be a little more than 4 free throws a game. The same with James Harden as well, very ball dominant player, and has been so used to getting 8 to 12 free throw attempts per game for the past nearly decade. So guys like that, it seems like they're trying to make an example of. Obviously Trae Young as well, but like you said before, would be more effective and more efficient and more tailored to the game that these referees are calling is going to the rim strong, like you want to make the basket. I mean, obviously, there have been times where James Harden, flails his arms for a foul and the ball miraculously goes in. Obviously, you're going to get that from time to time. Not anymore with the way that the game's been called now. You're going to have to go up strong. You're going to have to go up like you're trying to make the bucket. And the foul comes as a compliment to that. The contact is always going to be there. There's always going to be somebody in the paint nowadays ready to defend your shot. If James Harden can't do that on a consistent basis, it's not going to be pretty for his points per game average that he's clung to over the past decade. It's going to be lower than normal, especially in an offense with Kevin Durant and potentially Kyrie Irving returning in the near future.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that is being overlooked outside of just the flailing and going to the basket, they eliminating the pump fake, get the defender air, and jumping into him might be some of the reasons why Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, his points have been down. Primarily jump shooters who aren't allowed to get that guy in the defender and jump into him. aka the Dwayne Wade move, that he really started getting going in the early 2000s. So that's, I think, more important than the James Harden ones are like him actually flailing. But when it comes to the Dame Devin Booker, eliminating the offensive player seeking out contact and getting rewarded for it has really changed the game. And I actually really enjoyed that. So you can't do the classic get the defender on your back, jump backwards to pick up the foul because it's such an unnatural motion.
And that's the part of like that I think the NBA is trying to bring back is that it's not basketball than what they were doing. The only reason they were doing that was to draw contact. And that's not the point of the game. The point of the game is to put the ball in the basket. And I put it in the pre-show notes. I do like the way that they're officiating the game now. Listen, like players are going to have to adjust from college to the NBA. These pro players are going to have to now adjust the way this game has been officiated. In college and the NBA, they're officiated two totally different ways. You don't see those type of foul calls in the NCAA. You see it in the NBA over these past few years, and it's not only made the sport less watchable, it's really just damaging to the sport as a whole because now kids in high school are trying to draw contact like this, and it's not what the game was meant to be. And I think honestly, the NBA is doing this for viewership purposes because as NBA ratings have died down over the past few years, you can attribute that to whatever you want. I'm not going to get into whether it's political or not. The fact of the matter is NBA viewership has gone down. And part of that, whether you like it or not, is that these players are just drawing contacts basically any time that they can in the league or in a game setting. And they're getting to the line. And you know what that does?
That stops the game for a full minute. Challenges the foul call. That stops the game for 5 minutes. It's not continuous anymore. And what the NBA is doing is eliminating those stoppages and getting a more flow to the game where viewership will just be inclined to watch the game more because it's just faster and it's always happening. And it's not, every 4 possessions, a guard at the free throw line. That's really at the end of the day what makes the game boring. And the NBA wants to fix that.
Well said. And before we head to break and jump into NFL football for the remaining 30 minutes of our show, we do the thing in the NFL with the Directors Cup Power 5, and we're bringing that into the NBA as well. And it's actually, I think, more indicative of the actual power rankings in basketball because we'll get week to week where there's 3 or 4 games for a team. So we'll get to see more of each team, which will allow us to give us better predictions rather than the NFL, which is just 1 week. But that also is why the NFL is king because it's only once a week. So let's jump into it. We kind of know each other's first 2 just based off saying it earlier. So I won't waste any time in getting into that. I have the Jazz at number 1, 5-1. They look outstanding. Once again, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley playing, Bojan Bogdanovic. They've just got Joe Ingles. I mean, they've just got a bunch of players, good coach. And to me, 1 and 2 is debatable, but I lean the Jazz because they've done it more consistently the past 2 years.
I can agree with that. I think consistency plays a big role.
Roster turnover is huge in the NBA. The Jazz keep things consistent, and that's why they keep winning games. They're at 5-1, tied for best record in the league. That's why I also have them at 1. And then we talked about them already as well. Your team, the Miami Heat, they'll be slotted in at 2 for the both of us. For all the reasons that we said earlier, the Heat are improved offensively and improved defensively. You can't ask for more from a season to season change. And with Eric Spoelstra at the helm, one of the most disciplined rosters in the NBA.
Absolutely. That's who I have at 2 as well. At 3, I have the Golden State Warriors.
Okay, so we're top 3. Top 3 is the same.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to go Warriors at 3.
We did not discuss who we had 3 through 5 before the show. So it could be the same.
Who knows? But I doubt it from 4 and 5. Yeah. I do have the Warriors at 3 though.
But they are another team with a 5-1 record. Steph Curry looks outstanding. Jordan Poole has improved. Klay Thompson is on the way back, which will only elevate this team even more. They're just a well-balanced team right now. And last year, they had to rely on Steph Curry for almost everything. which is why they struggled in the record department and not picked up as many wins. But like I said, this year they've taken a little bit off his shoulders. They're more well balanced, and it's leading to more wins early on in the season. People forget how bad the Warriors were for most of the season last year until Steph won an insane run of scoring like 40 for 2 or 3 weeks straight.
Yeah, that was nuts. I missed that.
Yeah. I'll jump right into my number 4 team since you have the Warriors as well. It's the New York Knicks.
Okay.
They're 5-1 again. All the top 4 teams in my power rankings have the same record of 5-1. They've looked good. They're the second highest scoring team in the East behind the Charlotte Hornets. I thought their defense would take a large step back through the first 6 weeks. It really hasn't. Kemba's looked good. Unfortunately for you, Tyler, because I know he didn't give you that in the Celtics. Evan Fournier also looks pretty decent. Also
All
didn't give you
NBA
that to the
defender out of
Celtics.
nowhere. This guy's a new Marcus Smart now, I guess.
Yeah, so the Knicks, they look good early, and I suspect they'll be in this range again next week, considering they play the Raptors, Pacers, Cavs, and Bucks this upcoming week.
Yeah. The Knicks are not exactly at my number 4. Like I said, I had the Warriors at 3 for reasons I said before, too. The Warriors are one of my surprises this year, and I think that they're going to stick, especially with the re-addition of Klay Thompson. And their guys in the rotation have been balling out thus far early on in the season. Number 4, I actually have Brooklyn ahead of the Knicks at 5.
Brooklyn, as currently constructed, as long as you have James Harden and Kevin Durant in the Eastern Conference, you will be a top 2 team. I promise that. Obviously, with a 4-3 start, you can't be the number 1 team in the NBA with 6 teams sitting at 5-1. But they've looked the part so far. They just need to shore up some things in the front court with big play. LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Nicholas Claxton probably won't get it done as far as an end of season roster. Brooklyn's gonna have to make some moves eventually. Right now, I think that they're able to, just stay the course as long as they're remaining at a top 3 seed in the East. Questions at the trade deadline could come up around that time, but as of right now, things look fine in Brooklyn. When you have Durant and we have Harden, there's just no denying that you're a top 5 team in the NBA. And at this point, honestly, you could consider trading Kyrie Irving, and that's crazy to just go out and say that, right? But if you slot Harden at the 1, and then wherever you want to put KD in the lineup, you can build around that with a trading away Kyrie Irving. You pick up a young big, and you pick up some other pieces around the rotation. This is the best team in the league if you do that. And then on the other hand, if you bring back Kyrie, he gets vaccinated, you bring him back for the whole season, it could also be the best team in the league. So the Nets have a lot of flexibility about where they can go moving forward. But right now I have them at number 4 in the NBA. And number 5, your number 4, I have the Knicks. As much as it pains me to say the Knicks are a top 5 team in the NBA right now, they kind of are. And the offense has shown that. The defense hasn't been as abysmal as I thought it would be with the addition of the guards that they had and the guards that they retained. The Knicks are good. They get a lot of scoring from a lot of different people. Julius Randle, still not confident in him being a franchise player that could take you to a deep playoff run, but these regular season Knicks, they're going to be something to not be messed with. They look good so far.
I agreed with you on there. And my 5th team is actually the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay.
I mentioned as more struggling, but they're also missing Drew Holiday, and
That's why I kind of kept them out.
I think that once he comes back, they'll be in top 5 team. And I do believe that as currently constructed, I know Kyrie's not playing, but who knows what's going to happen with that situation. He might come back during the season. He might not come back during the season. I believe the Bucks are currently constructed as a better team, and that's why I have them as 5th in my ranking. And it's tough to pick between KD or Giannis, because that's basically what I was going with there.
Yeah.
Was who am I putting at 5th, KD's team or Giannis's team? And I just think Giannis's team is built better around him.
Yeah, I totally agree. But
with the Drew
right
Holiday
now,
being injured, and they just haven't been super consistent. 4 losses already. I couldn't have them in my top 5, but I could obviously see the argument you have there for the defending champion Bucks. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're wrapping up week 8 in the NFL. Week 8 in the NFL?
Yeah.
Yeah, week 8 in the NFL. Sorry, Typically, this is the halfway point. It's not this year. Everything's really discombobulated. 18-week season. We're recapping week 8 of the madness in what is king of the fall, the NFL. Stick with us. You're listening to the Director's Cut on 88.3 The Buzz with Nic Rohloff and Tyler Smith. Stick with us. .3 WSBU The Buzz live with the Director's Cut, Nic Rohloff and Tyler Smith. Just recapped this week in this league, the NBA, the greatest soap opera in sports. But hey, we're still in the fall, and the NFL reigns supreme. That's why we have our last half hour of the show is dedicated to recapping Sunday, maybe previewing Monday if we got some time. Nick, week 8 takeaways. Let's start with you. What did you see this week that you liked?
Well, I wouldn't say I liked what I saw, but one of my biggest takeaways is that the Lions might go 0-17. They added an extra game this year, and I don't think it's even going to help them get another win because it doesn't look good for Jared Goff and company. I thought this week they've been competitive in a couple games. Almost beat the Lions, or no, they are the Lions. They almost beat the Vikings. They almost came back and beat the 49ers. They almost beat the Ravens if it wasn't for a 66-yard field goal. And they even were almost beat the Rams. But then they come out and lose 44-6 to the Eagles, who aren't that good of a team. And let me rattle off the remaining schedule for you. In Pittsburgh this week, nope. In Cleveland the following week. Cleveland doesn't look good, but I still think in Cleveland, nope. Home against Chicago, maybe. Home against Minnesota, I don't even think so at this point. In Denver, no. Home against Cardinals, no. In Atlanta, who knows? In Seattle with Russell back, no. And in home against Green Bay, no. So, yes, maybe they upset one team.
Lions on the schedule?
Yeah, they do. But maybe they upset one team. But after what I saw against the Philadelphia Eagles, who is not that good of a team, they're a below average team in the NFL, and they lost at home 44-6.
Yeah, they gave up.
They looked like a team that aren't going to win a game. And I know the season is not over, according to Jared Goff, but the Lions' season is over. They're not going to maybe winning. They're not going to win more than one game. I can guarantee that. And I think they're lucky to win one. We might see in the first 17-game season in NFL history that a team goes 0-17 and leave it to the last team to go 0-16, the Detroit Lions.
That would be nuts. And you know what's really tough about the Lions is that they do have some talent.
They do. I could name more offensive players on the Lions than maybe I could the Jets, who picked up a win this week. DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson are two of the most young, exciting players in the NFL right now. And if they just had a quarterback that was able to really take charge of a game, and that's just not Jared Goff at this point, they'd be in a better spot. They'd probably already have a win with the amount of one-possession games that they've done. This week was the total opposite of that, and they get thrashed by Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles at home. So that's really rough for Detroit. It's not a bad prediction there that they might go winless. My first takeaway of the week is that I touched on it just briefly right there. The Bengals, they lose to the Jets, but they'll be fine. Okay. At this point, it leads into my other takeaway. The AFC North is kind of imploding a little bit. Obviously, the odds-on favorite right now would be the Ravens to take home that division. But as far as the second best team in the AFC North goes, the Bengals are still right there. They were able to put up a ton of points on the Jets, who, honestly, you're seeing Mike White for the first time. Like, it happens. Like, there have been games like this where guys just go off in their first NFL start. Like, you saw it, I believe, with who am I forgetting? I know it was Vinny Testaverde in his first start. He just went off, and just at the end of the day, Vinny Testaverde, not an all-time great quarterback. Joe Burrow is still able to sling the rock. They took some bad hits yesterday, but the Bengals, upcoming for the rest of the season, don't have the worst schedule in the league. They do play some of their AFC North counterparts a few times, but they got a matchup against the Broncos, the Niners. The Steelers aren't great. The Raiders aren't great, especially at home. The Raiders don't have the best home field advantage yet in Vegas. And they play the Browns twice. So with the way that this division is shaking out, it still seems like the Bengals are the team to come in second there, as long as the Ravens avoid more injuries there. Jamar Chase, still a dominant rookie wide receiver. He dropped a touchdown yesterday, which could have changed things. And obviously Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, the rest of their weapons have been solid as well. So I think it's just a weird trap game after a huge win over the Ravens. Weird trap game on the road against a quarterback you've never seen before. There's zero tape on the guy. I watched Mike White play live in the Meadowlands, Giants-Jets preseason, and he couldn't move the ball against the Giants' third stringers. So obviously this is an anomaly. The Bengals will be fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to take away from that game, and I don't know. Like, it's one of those games where you just want to throw away, considering the Bengals were winning by 11.
I think everybody
can have one of those games every year.
Yeah,
one that you just throw away.
It's just odd. My second takeaway is, I alluded to earlier in the show at the opening, is that Carson Wentz is always going to Carson Wentz. People were saying he's back with Frank Wright. His coaching is good again. He's not turning the ball over as much. He's not even putting the ball in that harm's way as much. There goes that out the window, as he looked bad. 51 pass attempts on Sunday against Tennessee and only mustered up 230 passing yards. Did have 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, including the pick 6 at his own end zone, with the game tied in about 2 minutes left, which was one of the most bonehead plays I've seen in such a long time. Could have just got outside the pocket, threw the ball away, but instead tried to stay in the pocket and make people miss. Would have got dragged down for a safety, and then he threw a left-handed pass just to try to not be a safety, and it ended up being a pick 6. And then his other interception was in overtime. Both teams already had the ball, so all they needed to do is have a field goal to win it. And what he do? Throw a pick in the triple coverage, Kevin Byard jumps the crossing route, catches it, and runs it back to about the 30 where the Titans kick the game-winning field goal in overtime. But this is what I'm talking about. The Colts have a good roster. They're quarterback away. Many believe Carson Wentz could be that quarterback, but he just makes too many dumb mistakes that not even rookies make sometimes. It's truly unbelievable. I don't think he will ever change. I don't care who his coach is. He's not someone who can lead a team to the promised land. Maybe a playoff spot, but not the promised land.
That hurts to hear, considering I'm a Carson Wentz defender, and he had flashes yesterday where he looked really, really good. And you see the pick six at your own 5-yard line where you're trying to get the ball away for no reason. I did not like the decision making from Carson Wentz down the stretch of yesterday.
For the Colts, we
out
didn't touch on them a lot in the open, but Michael Pittman Jr. is becoming a wide receiver one in front of everybody's eyes. He's a beast. 6'4" frame, 24 years old. Actually has a really cool series on YouTube where he game day vlogs every week. And I saw one time that he's got a pretty unorthodox pregame meal. He does plain pasta and spaghetti like he's Buddy the Elf from Elf. And he's been producing. So I guess that works for him if you're eating some unorthodox things pregame. But the Colts with Carson Wentz at the helm just don't seem like they're built for long-term success. Carson Wentz, like you said, still makes way too erratic decisions. And it doesn't really matter who his coach is because he had the most success with Frank Reich, and it's just kind of mediocre at this point. Heading into my second takeaway is that the Browns, they're just not going to win a playoff game. They're not. Listen, they sit at 4-4 right now. It's going to be a climb to make the playoffs in the AFC. It's going to be competitive out in the wild card spots there. So the Browns need to figure it out fast. Baker Mayfield, another no touchdown game yesterday. And the Browns so far in half their games this season through week 8, they've scored 2 or less touchdowns in 4 of their 8 games this season. And in other games this season, they've let up 4 or more touchdowns. So the Browns seem very inconsistent right now. Right tackle Jack Conklin is out a couple weeks with a dislocated elbow, I believe. Yes, dislocated elbow, Coach Kevin Stefanski said. So their offensive line keeps getting more banged up. I know Nick Chubb came back, but Kareem Hunt is still out. So they missed that dynamic of the two-headed rushing attack. Baker Mayfield hasn't been able to find Odell Beckham. He had 1 catch for 6 yards, the lowest in his career, playing a full game yesterday. So the Browns offense looks broken, and their defense obviously can only keep them in so many games. You let up 15 points to the Steelers, you should probably come out with a win, and they couldn't do so at home yesterday. Browns offense looking bleak, not looking good for the long term with a lot of injuries piling up.
Yeah, man. As much as I want to root for Baker and Cleveland to succeed because of how bad they've been for a while, the more I watch, I don't know what it could possibly be, but maybe he's just not the guy. Because there's no way Odell and Jarvis Landry are that washed, especially with the running back
Jarvis
situation.
Landry was dropping some passes yesterday that he should have caught. So you could make an argument for him. Odell, the injuries just keep stacking up for him. That could be the story, but you've got to find more than 1 reception for the guy.
And it's time to get into our takeaways from our own teams, both of them with a successful Sunday.
Oh, baby.
I don't know the last time we've both had a successul Sunday.
Yeah, it's been shaky for
at least one of us every week.
It's been shaky. The Patriots have been pretty average to start the year. They're on the up and up, though.
Yeah, up and up. They finally got their first win against a team not named the Jets or Texans in what seems like about a calendar year. Obviously not true, but it is like their first win against they've had 4 wins since like week of like 4 or 13 of last year, and 3 of them were against the Jets. So it's good to go into LA against a good Chargers team and beat them 27-24. The defense played outstanding, which surprised me. Former LA Chargers came to play. Hunter Henry recovering the game or sealing onside kick, but Adrian Phillips, a safety, the third safety, but the Patriots play a lot of 3 safety defense with Devin McCourty deep, Adrian Phillips, and former second-round pick of 2 years ago, Kyle Duggar, roaming inside the box. Adrian Phillips with a pick in the first half and the game-winning pick 6 with about 10 minutes left in the fourth to give the Patriots the lead for the first time of the game. The I mean, the Patriots defense played well against one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Mac Jones had his worst game as a pro. He was very inaccurate, didn't turn the ball over, but didn't throw a touchdown pass. There was one point he was like 6 of 19. He just was not on his A game. And the Chargers defense did a good job against the Patriots offense, I'd say. Held them to 4 field goals, which, I mean, Nick Folk's a superstar this year. He just simply doesn't miss kicks. But the fact that the Patriots defense was able to limit the Chargers and basically win the game showed improvement to me, because the Patriots defense has been iffy at times this year. But 2 good games in a row, blowing out the Jets, and then traveling to LA to get the win. And their next 3 games, as a Patriots fan, you can't not salivate over the potential possibility of a 3-0 run here in Carolina, home against Cleveland, and then in Atlanta. 2-1 should be minimum. 3-0 because Cleveland's struggling. And who knows who's starting at quarterback next week for Carolina, whether it be Sam Darnold or PJ Walker. Either way, I think the Patriots, the Patriots should win. They already are favorites on the road next week. They'll be favored at home because of how lackluster the Cleveland Browns offense has looked, and they'll for sure be favorites in Atlanta because they stink.
I'm rooting hard for your pass next week.
I'm telling you.
That's key. I mean,
it is key for the Seahawks.
Panthers can't be piling up more wins against teams that they shouldn't be beating. So,
but the Patriots 7-4 watch in 3 weeks from now, it's officially starting.
Ooh, interesting. That'd be a really key place for them to be down the stretch of the season. That would be basically locked up for the playoffs as long as they don't lose out. Seattle. They have work to do, but you got that. That was a must-win yesterday. Like you couldn't lose to the Jags, 31-7. They take an onside kickback for a touchdown in the closing minutes of the game. That was pretty cool. DK Metcalf, I want to sign him to a lifetime contract. Did you see him high point that ball in the end zone yesterday? Unbelievable. That was Calvin Johnson Megatron-esque stuff. Tyler Lockett, another bounce-back game for him. 12 catches for 142 yards. I'll take that every day of the week. I take that twice during the week on Sundays if Russell Wilson was back, and he will be. Hopefully, he got the pin removed from his finger today. Should be back after this bye week, after another week of recovery. Packers in Lambeau Field in 2 weeks. I'm excited for that one. That'll be the game of the week at 4:25, and I have a feeling that that's going to be one the Packers drop. The Seahawks coming off a bye, first game back with Russ. I'm really looking forward to that game. Then you get the Cardinals, and you get
the football team, and the Niners, then the Texans. Then you can see the Rams, but then you see the Bears and the Lions. The Seahawks could legitimately put together here if Russell Wilson comes back the right way. And, for a guy who's not injured basically at all through his entire career, you have to be thankful that it was just a broken finger or whatever it was in his middle finger. On his throwing hand, that stinks, but at least it wasn't an ankle or a leg or a shoulder or a labrum or something like that could derail you for an entire season. He'll be back. He'll be throwing the football. And if the Seahawks can get together, split with the Cardinals, because they always do, take wins from the teams you need to beat, like Washington, the San Fran, Texans, Lions, and the Bears. That's 6 more wins. They could be 9-8 and sneaking into that NFC 7 spot. I'm back on the Seahawks playoff train at 3-5. They are ready to go, roaring to go. Russell Wilson back in 2 weeks. Book it.
Okay. Both of us are very optimistic.
So optimistic. I'm never like this. I'm never like this.
Yeah.
But
I know you are usually kind of negative in the Seattle Seahawks kind of way. Let's move on to we only have 8 minutes left, so we're going to have to speed through some of these.
Oh, yeah.
But Tyler, stinker stories of the week.
All right, we'll make it quick. Cooper Kupp, greatest season ever. What is this guy doing? What is in his cereal? Cooper Kupp, another game, 7 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Right now, he's on track for over 1,900 yards and 20 touchdowns, and I think it'd be 135 receptions. That would not be broke an NFL record thanks to Michael Thomas 2 years ago, but the yards and the touchdowns would both be NFL records. Could be the greatest season from a wide receiver we've ever seen. Matt Stafford loves feeding Cooper Kupp the ball. They made another team look inferior yesterday in the Houston Texans, winning 38-22 after some late game garbage time touchdowns. They were up 38-0 in that game. second sticker story of the week. I know everybody loves these stuff because we talk about the most boring teams in the NFL. Well, we got maybe the most boring game in the NFL yesterday between two of its most boring teams. The Denver Broncos defeating the Washington football team in Mile High, 17-10. You got masterful QB performances. Taylor Heineke and Teddy Bridgewater, two of the NFL's elite, going head-to-head. And, they combined for 3-4 total touchdowns between the two. Just not great football to be watched in that 4 o'clock window. Denver and Washington made it a stinker. Third sticker story of the week. And going back to that Steelers-Browns game, not a lot of offense whatsoever. But whatever offense was generated on the Pittsburgh side was thanks to Najee Harris. This guy is a monster. I know he had 26 carries for 91 yards. That's not great as far as yards per carry go, but he added a touchdown, was effective in the passing game. And this offense goes as Najee Harris goes. And I could see that being the case for the foreseeable future as long as they don't make any improvements in the quarterback department. Ben Roethlisberger, classic performance, 266 and 1 touchdown. You get the yards with him, but you don't get much effectiveness for the rest of the offensive end. Ben Roethlisberger needs to be replaced yesterday. So Najee Harris, you go, the Steelers go. And those are my sticker stories for this week. Made it quick.
Yeah, and before we move into our Power 5, quick just touch on the trade deadline. I'll just
give a quick run through. Obviously, Von Miller traded
we should have got to that, but
traded to the Rams earlier today for a second and third round pick. Unbelievable. They now have Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey on the same defense. The Rams are going for it all this season.
I don't even think you could do that, Matt.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson is likely to be staying put in Houston, at least for this trade deadline. It was reported that the Dolphins and Texans were close, but that seems to be like heading in the opposite direction, and Deshaun Watson will remain on the Texans through the deadline. I think there's some wide receiver buzz for the deadline. Allen Robinson struggling on the Bears. Will he get moved? Odell Beckham on the Browns. Will he be moved? Brandon Cooks on the Texans. Will he be moved? Deshaun Jackson wants to be traded. So be on the lookout for a lot of wide receivers. If we had more time, we'd go into where we think the best landing spots would be for them. Maybe even Brandon Ayuk on the 49ers might be traded, the second-year player, former first-round pick. But Kyle Shanahan apparently hates him. So I don't know what's up with that super talented receiver. But maybe he gets traded while his value is still somewhat decent.
Listen, all right. Just get somebody to Green Bay. Please get somebody.
Yeah, I can see Deshaun Jackson being that one.
That would probably.
Allen Robinson's out because Bears, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe Odell, but I don't even know if Packers fans want that. To be honest.
I don't know if Aaron Rodgers wants that.
Yeah.
I think he makes all the decisions as far as the rest of the season goes.
Brandon Cooks would be kind of filthy. Won't lie to you there.
Brandon Cooks would be the addition that they need. That would be a deep threat. That would be a guy you can go to opposite Devontae Adams. Green Bay would be Super Bowl favorites, in my opinion, if they added Brandon Cooks.
All right. And while we're talking about favorites, let's jump in to our Power 5 as we got 4 minutes left. I'll kick us off, and it was definitely influenced by the trade this morning, but it's the Los Angeles Rams. I think I would have had them here anyway because they've just been nonstop dominant, but it definitely didn't change my mind that they added another perennial pass rusher alongside Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, who are arguably the first and second best defenders in the league on one defense, and then you add a top 5 outside linebacker. My goodness, it's gonna be scary hours for some of those quarterbacks out there.
Yeah, especially those in the NFC West. Luckily, the Seahawks only play the Rams one more time this season, so Russ is going to have to be running for his life against guys like Aaron Donald and Von Miller. And that's for all those reasons why I have the Rams at number 1 in my Power 5 as well. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, finally getting this.
Robert Woods actually finally getting more involved into the offense. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday. Darrell Henderson looking like a top 10 running back in the league this season. That offense is probably the most well-oiled machine in football. They make bad teams look worse like they did yesterday with the Texans. And, they got an opportunity to really expose a Tennessee Titans team next week without Derrick Henry. So the Rams at 1 for me.
Yeah, at 2, I've got the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
Because of the win in Minnesota with no Dak Prescott, it just shows me how good their team is. And then when Dak's there, they're just really that much better. And that's why I have them at number 2. I believe I had them at 4 last week. So they take a bump up with winning in a hostile environment with a backup QB.
I'm going to go not the Cowboys this time around, although yesterday did impress me with what they could do with Cooper Rush. I only could imagine what the result would have been with Dak Prescott. And number 2, I still got the Cardinals. They still lead the NFL by a large margin in point differential. Oh, excuse me. No, they do not. The Bills do. That's because they've played Miami and Houston.
They played Miami
beat them by
twice.
50 each. So as far as teams with a good strength of schedule thus far, I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals at number 2, over 100-point differential. They've beaten really good teams, including the number 1 team, the Rams. You lose to Aaron Rodgers, it's not much of an indictment on how bad you are. It's more of an indictment on how good Aaron Rodgers is, and that's what they did last Thursday. They were always bound to lose a game. The Cardinals were never going undefeated. This is where it ended up. I still think they're a top 3 team in the NFL, and currently I got them slotted at 2.
At 3, I have the Green Bay Packers, who just beat the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. Aaron Rodgers, it got help from a bad play by A.J. Green, but the Packers pull out the win without a top 3 wide receivers, no Lazard, no Tay Adams, and no Micah or Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So big win for the Packers. And once again, it's kind of like the Dak Prescott thing. When fully healthy, they'll just be even better. So that's why I have them at number 3, moving up 2 spots from where I had them last week.
Interesting enough. And then your number 2 team I have in my number 3. This is usually how this kind of goes. We've got the same agenda of teams, but maybe in different spots or 2. Dallas, obviously, the defense is
for real. Trayvon Diggs learned how to actually cover for a full 60 minutes last night, albeit it was against Kirk Cousins. And you know how I feel about him if you've been listening since 6 p.m. Cowboys, they look good. The defense has been much improved over last season. That's apparent. Obviously, Micah Parsons, he almost had a pick 6 last night if it wasn't dropped. That's rookie stuff. He'll get improved. He'll improve as the years go on. Once they get to Marcus Lawrence back, it'll be even scarier. And the offense was firing all cylinders last night. I said earlier, their receivers seem to have 2 to 3 feet of separation minimum every time that they had a reception last night. So the Cowboys look like they're roaring to go. The run game's fine. Dak comes back. You actually get a win in a week where you're just resting Dak to make sure that he's okay for next season and those thereafter. And you pick up a win with Cooper Rush. All hats off to Dallas. They're my number 3.
As we approach 8 o'clock, we'll have to go quickly through our 4 and 5.
Yeah.
For me, I have the Bucs at 4. Tough loss in New Orleans, but they struggled with New Orleans in the regular season anyway, since Tom Brady's got their 0-3 against them in the regular season. I'm still not concerned about them. Brady's arm still looks good, and Godwin is getting better and better. For my 5th team, before I hop it over to you, is the Buffalo Bills. Struggled against the Miami Dolphins, but ultimately got the job done. And if you didn't notice, I don't have the Cardinals in my top 5. It's just because of how good these 5 teams are.
Interesting.
In my mind. I just think the top of the league is so good. I would rather have all these 5 teams, and I think all 5 of these teams do have a better chance to win the Super Bowl than the Cardinals. But either way, I'll throw it back to you for your final 2 teams.
Interesting. My final 2 teams are teams included in your top 5 as well. I do have the Packers at number 4. What they showed me this week was that they can change the dynamic of the game from Aaron Rodgers slinging the ball 45 times to an Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, 2-headed rushing attack that rivals the best in the NFL. I could take them right up there with Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
In Cleveland as 2 of the NFL's elite running back duos. So that's going to be a new dynamic for teams to watch out for and just make the Packers that much more dangerous as the season goes on. And then number 5, I have the Bucs. You lose to the Saints yesterday. Like you said, they do struggle with New Orleans in the regular season. Tom Brady's normally struggled with New Orleans in the regular season. They'll be fine. They still have the best front 7 in the NFL. Their secondary is getting healthier. They have their safeties back. Their outside cornerbacks do need to come back for them to be at full strength. But Bucs at number 5, they'll be fine.
Yeah, so we're pretty similar. You don't have the Bills in your top 5.
I don't. I've taken them out.
They did not play well enough yesterday for me to re-include
them back in my top 5.
Interesting. I assume we both like the Chiefs at home
5
against the
NFC
Giants.
teams for me. 5 NFC teams.
That was me last week, but now I got the Bills. We both like the Chiefs tonight against the Giants at home to get back to 500.
The win, yes.
Okay.
The cover, not so sure. Danny Jones.
10.5 now.
Danny Jones could be pulling some tricks out of his sleeve if the Chiefs defense plays to the way that it has all season. I could see the Giants covering, but I'll stick with it. Chiefs will win this game. I'm not going to bet it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't touch it either. That's going to wrap up our show. Thanks for listening. And for the first live stream of the year, we'll
Love
be
having
back
this.
next Monday. Bonnie's season starts Tuesday, so we'll be breaking that down next Monday along with
Big
week
time.
9 in the NFL and more, of course, NBA basketball. So stay tuned for that. Signing off for Tyler Smith, it's Nic Rohloff. Thanks for listening to Director's Cut on WSBU 88.3 The Buzz.